So I completely covered the speaker with cling film and selected my track. Only one would be sufficient for a task like this, and it was, of course, Rolling Stones and Paint It Black. So as I cranked up the volume and those immortal bars came in, little nodules started to form in what was flat and void, shiny, white, and still. Through the noise and vibrations of my speaker, some unfriendly looking shaky creatures started to appear, creeping through the top of the solution. But it wasn't strong enough. So I gave it more power, and slowly they gained a little more strength, seemingly trying to pull themselves out of whatever portal we had just created. But still, it wasn't enough. Even with maximum volume, we didn't have enough strength. So I gave up for fear of complaints from my neighbors, and we decided that my speakers just weren't powerful enough. So I concluded failure. I don't find human interaction easy. People are unpredictable. They use a lot of words when one could say the same thing much more efficiently. I believe that one person is smart, but I treat a collection of people just like they're sheep. To help me prepare for the unpredictable nature of human interaction, I prepare for the best case scenario and the worst case scenario and a few in between, because surprises, even the good ones, they tend to derail me. I struggle with eye contact and understanding when people are being sarcastic or pedantic or whatever. I studied facial expressions and body language to try and help me better understand, but my mind gets distracted with unusual things, or it latches onto one minor thing. I don't think that I feel human emotions. At least if I do, I don't fully understand them. If I've ever been in love, it was only once. But if I had the same conditions with someone else, then I think I would have been perfectly happy. So I can only conclude that it wasn't so much the person, but the experiences of that relationship is actually what I had missed. My ex-partner used to say that I was a good listener, that I asked insightful questions. But in all honesty, I just didn't know how to get them to stop. The questions that I asked was my way of trying to find out exactly what they wanted from me. As a child, I felt that most people were just being polite and putting up with me until I eventually gave up and went away and left them alone. I couldn't figure out what they wanted. I still struggle with what people want. I enjoy swing dancing because there is an implied contract here. You go up, you ask someone to dance, and for the length of the song, we have a range of protocol that governs our movements and i.e. how each person reacts, etc. That is, to dancing. However, in life, this is rare. I categorize people into boxes or a series of boxes to help try and help me predict their motives or their behaviors. There's, of course, benefits to how my mind operates. I've never been diagnosed with anything, so I don't really know how best to refer to it. In first aid emergencies, for instance, I am calm and focused, regardless of who is involved. And I've been involved in a few with some family members, but my heart rate and my breathing, they remain unaffected. In hospital, whenever my ex-wife was giving birth, I quickly noticed the patterns on the machines. I assume they were measuring contractions. I'm not entirely certain. And there was a monitor on the baby's head also. So from this, I was able to notice patterns, and I could see the contraction gaining strength, and then I could advise her to breathe deeply on the antinox to take the top of the contraction. Each time that she moved into a different position to try and get more comfortable, I shifted the many leads and the drips and whatnot so that they wouldn't get tangled. Just have to move this a little. Afterwards, the midwife team commented about how I should maybe consider studying midwifery to become part of a midwife team. They said they never saw a husband be so helpful. And I thought this was very kind because after all, I had wrongly identified my child's gender on the first attempt. The second attempt was the charm. So I was ushered out into the corridor with this little bundle, who was now my daughter. But don't worry for me though, babies and children are easy. Their demands are few in variety, even if they are many demands. I enjoy playing with babies and children. They are honest in their assessments and they react exactly how they mean, without posturing or pretense. And so as my daughter became older, she moved out of this stage and we enjoy travel together. But for my regular visitations, I needed something further than just arts and crafts. TV watching is not an ideal way to spend time with your only child. At school, I've always loved computer studies and science. Here is a predictable thing with rules and results based upon those rules. Now, but these are not subjects that my daughter overly enjoys, but still she showed enthusiasm for our Science Mondays. From vinegar volcanoes to building and operating our robot projects. It's a fairly simple device. There was just two motors, here and here, which goes forward and back based on whatever inputs we have. But it was obvious that it was playing with rather than building these robots that she loved. So we had light sensors at the front, which you could set, program them with the little selector switch just here, as you can see, just in there. So you could either set it to chase or avoid light, the little parking sensors at the front. So again, it could either chase or avoid an object. Her giggles at this little device chasing her around the house still echo in my halls. These are happy memories. As a baby, my daughter loved the beginning of the track Painted Black by the Rolling Stones. So it seemed like a great track to test out our Newtonian fluid. For those that maybe don't know what it is, it's a solution, and they use that word loosely because it varies from solution to solid. It contains corn flour. It's called a Newtonian, non-Newtonian fluid because it means that it doesn't follow Newton's law of viscosity or resistance. For instance, water has the same resistance or viscosity regardless of what pressure is placed upon it. For instance, if you've ever been baking and you've tapped the top of the cake to help the fluid pour out, the cake mix pour out to the corners of the cake tin, then you are operating within these principles by making the cake mix more of a fluid. And so we cover the sideways speaker with film and slowly pour the fluid into the speaker. Add sound, in our case, the stones. The vibrations and the microscopic pulses of the speaker started to affect the fluid. We could see little waves of motion cutting across the glossy surface. For me, too many sources of noise can overwhelm me. So it's really fascinating to be able to physically see the noise. To better see the properties of this non-Newtonian fluid, it helps to break the surface or to cause some resistance. So I asked my now 10-year-old daughter to poke the surface. Moving with the vibrations of the music, the little nodules started to form on this previously flat void. These unfriendly looking shaking creatures started to appear, but wasn't showing the full effect. So I gave it more power. But still the vibrations were not strong enough to cause the fluid to stretch out and to dance its distorted little dance, like a cross between the ocean in the Moana film and the road cleaners in Monsters, Inc., if you've seen either of those movies. So after changing something with a good bit more bass, the creatures returned, alien, malevolent. But still, they weren't strong enough. They're only partly formed. Even at maximum volume, my speakers did not sustain enough pulses to help them truly live. So finally, I gave up for fear of complaints from my neighbors. And so we figured that my 90s hi-fi speakers, they were just not strong enough. And so I concluded failure. Science has its rules. And really, in the scale that we were conducting our tests and experiments, failure is no big deal. We can just pack our things away and go and do something else fun. Now, as my daughter is midway through her teenage years, I can't help but feel that my biggest experiment is still to come. That somehow I have to find out how to be the human, how to be the man that she needs me to be. I have a 2-year-old as well. And as I said, babies are easy. But I find myself now hesitant to be as tactile with my eldest as I used to be. This is paralleled strongly when I have them both together and I'm comfortable with my youngest and uncomfortable with my eldest. This young woman visits my house often. I feel apart, I feel awkward, and I struggle to know how to operate and conduct myself. I have no box for her as she changes from this lively kid into a fine young woman. She doesn't need the formality of a female coworker or that, so I'm really not sure. There's no context of experience for me to pluck these predictable behaviors or motivations from. And perhaps I'm ahead of the curve with the knowledge that I don't actually know what's going on in my daughter's head. Perhaps some parents are misled into thinking that they do, but I have no such misconceptions. It doesn't help me, however, as I go forth with the biggest and probably most important experiment of my life, an experiment with stakes so high that I cannot concede failure.